Welcome to M2TechCast, a live internet radio show offering the latest news and interviews with the people driving business, technology, and politics in Michigan. Now, your hosts, Matt Roush and Mike Brennan.
Well, Mike Brennan, anyway. Matt is at an LTU golf outing shooting photographs for one of their publications. So you got me today, but I'm sure we can get through this together. And we have calling in from somewhere. I'm not sure if she's in Dearborn or where, but or Detroit, but Tamara Shoemaker, who's with the Cyber Patriot program. We've had her on the show many times before. How you doing today, Tamara?
I'm doing really good, Mike. How about yourself?
Can't complain. So finally have decent summer weather. So one of the things we wanted to go over, let's start with, I always assume that we have a lot of first-time guests and they may or may not know about who you are or what you do. So why don't we start with that and then we'll get into your questions.
Sure. So I'm Tamara Shoemaker, and I'm the director of the Center for Cybersecurity and Intelligence Studies at the University of Detroit Mercy. And I'm also the founder of the MCC Coalition of Schools and Industry Partners that all get together around teaching cybersecurity, and the mission of our Reaching Back into the K through 12 program helped us to found the Michigan Cyber Patriot program here in Michigan. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about.
All right. And so one of the things that, well, like everybody else, how has COVID impacted the Cyber Patriot program?
So not to brag, but I will. So Cyber Patriot, one of the really cool things about Cyber Patriot is it's always been a virtual competition. And so it's a virtual competition that happens monthly all through the fall and winter season. And then early spring, they then compete nationally. And nationally is really the only time that you leave your home. Or it's not virtual. It wasn't virtual, at least up until now. And so the only thing that they had to adopt and change was our national program. So before, you just logged in with your computers and did it virtually on a weekend during the school year. And then nationals, you physically went to Baltimore. But this year, they had to alter it because of COVID. And so they had to have their spring actual championship virtual. And so they had to make some tweaks. But it really wasn't a heavy lift for us because we're used to doing it virtually, right? So instead of the only bad part was that teams weren't able to be in the same room with each other, team members, and be able to sort of talk that way. But one of the things I've discovered when doing the cyber camps this summer virtually is kids are very used to using these tools and being in a virtual experiencing and working together. I mean, it wasn't very much different than what they do when they're doing gaming, and they're doing it in a group kind of setting, and they're on a team, which much like that for them. So they've been sort of, preparing for this for a while. Whereas we as older workers and folks are having to get used to this virtual kind of way of communicating and working together.
Is that the biggest lessons that you've learned so far from?
So it was one of them.
So
that was one of them, and it was kind of a heartwarming one, right? To see how well they work together and how some of the little glitches that would just blow my mind, like if the Zoom wasn't working exactly perfectly, or somebody had an echo, or something was going on. Normally, as an organizer of one of those kind of things, I would freak out, and it would be upsetting that it wasn't totally perfectly professional. But it was amazing how the kids and my instructors and all those folks just like, oh no, that's really easy, Mrs. Shoemaker, you just have to do this or that, and just that goes away and it's fixed. Everyone was just sort of working together to make sure that the whole thing worked out really, really well over the summer. So that was kind of cool to see that. I am disappointed and I talked to this a little bit last time I was with you about the digital divide. I'm still very upset about that, and I still want to work on that. So that's a really big thing across our state. There's a huge digital divide. And what I say by digital divide, so I'm not just talking to us, right, is that folks that have the kind of personal PCs and laptops and things that they can use to get online, and they have good internet connections and all that fast and all that kind of good stuff. And then the folks that don't. And then are not used to using that kind of stuff on a daily basis. And maybe they have one laptop in the house, but if mom's working from home and she's using that laptop, then, the kids that were coming to my camp or playing Cyber Patriot wouldn't be able to participate because mom's got to earn money. So that kind of piece became very much more evident while having to go virtual for both our spring award ceremony that we did here in Michigan and when we did our camp. That became really obvious that there's a huge difference between the folks that have a lot of computers and the capabilities that come with high-speed internet and all that, and that don't. And so we were sort of thinking that we would be able to get a bigger crowd, when in actuality it actually didn't. It actually limited who we could service, and it was very upsetting to me because I envisioned with all the help that I had that I was going to be able to just blast it out to the whole state, but it didn't work out perfectly, and so I was a little frustrated with that.
So having those computer labs at the various schools makes a big difference then.
Sure, for those folks that can't have them, that can't afford to have that in their own home, absolutely. Now they have those things that are there. There were some cool things that happened in the city of Detroit. A bunch of industry came together and supplied pads for every kid in Detroit, but that was in Detroit. So we're not talking about rural Michigan and all the other areas that don't have that kind, didn't have people come together and realize right away, hey, if we're going to continue education, we're going to need to, get, help everyone. So that's still a big issue. And so, yeah, not having those kinds of things available is definitely going to hold us back.
All right. So moving forward into the 2021 school year, and this is sort of classified as an after-school program, how do you see this all working out?
So one of the things that even from the beginning, 5 years ago when I first started doing it, I noticed right away that some of the hip teachers were not just using this as an after-school program. Because it's so well put together and so easy to implement, and there's so many tutorials, and Cisco is involved, Facebook, IBM, all of those really big names in IT are helping to support this program. What they're able to do is not just drop it down as an after-school program, which is what it's intended to be, but also take all those tutorials and all those resources and use them in the classroom. I was asked by the Michigan Department of Education to sort of map up what Cyber Patriot delivers and what the Michigan new cyber security standard is. And if you actually implement Cyber Patriot, you're getting about half to 3/4 of the way through the Michigan standard, actually completing it. And so the smarter teachers, the ones that were easy and those early adopters quickly noticed that right away and dropped down wonderfully prepared lessons for themselves, and they got a kickstart. And it's a really good place to start. So that's a really nice entryway if you're thinking about starting to do cybersecurity in your classrooms. It's a really nice, easy way to grab onto some prepared stuff that's already out there and we know is easy to implement.
Okay, so what's the future of K-12 cybersecurity instruction? In the light of COVID, which probably until we get a vaccine, we're stuck with for however long, right?
Right. So I think the thing that's cool about it is it's gaining and it's bright and getting brighter. So while I get a little frustrated about the digital divide, there's an awful lot of really good things that are happening. Right now, I sit on 2 or 3 committees that our governor has put together to work on making sure that our classrooms are secure, right? So number one, right, if we're going to be doing all this virtually and stuff, we want to make sure everybody's safe and everything's secure. They want to make sure that the curriculum and the things that we're doing the resources for all of that are available. So we have a standard, but we don't necessarily have bunches of stuff put together for our teachers to go ahead and deliver that in the classroom, right? And so we've been working on getting a huge resource, listing of resources and websites and all kinds of ways for teachers to easily implement this stuff and then go forward. And then the last part is to sort of reward folks for doing that and sort of pull out the stars that are working and so that they're a shining example across the state, and then they can help work with others. It's one of those things that works really, really well in my Cyber Patriot program. Everybody in this industry feels responsible for making a difference. So I've got tons of industry partners that get involved and become mentors. Our teachers are real excited about it. They're hungry for the information. So the fact that we have these really organized multi-agency committees that are working on this right now really gets me excited that there's a bright future ahead for us. and we can quit, whining about the fact that, we're falling behind, and that other places are taking us a little bit more seriously and that we're not. I really feel like we're making some really good strides.
Let's talk about the current scope of the cybersecurity programs. Kind of update for the audience and me. How many schools now participate in Michigan?
So in Michigan, we went from 5 years ago, we went from 4 teams to 182 teams playing. So we went from 20 kids playing and working on this, in their schools to now over 1,000. I don't know how it's going to grow this year. One of the things that's really cool that people can tell other people that are thinking about it is it is all virtual, right? So it's easy to implement, even in the situations if you have to go to all virtual. It's very inexpensive to run. You just have to be able to have a computer or a laptop and internet connection. And let's see, what was the other thing that was really important? Shoot. There's so many things there that already to just download and start using, right? So that part you can, get yourself running. I lost train. I'm so sorry.
We were talking about moving forward and how many total participants you have in the program right now.
Oh, right. Oh, and that was the big thing. So one of the things that a lot of my coaches have been reporting back to me is that most of the sports for the high schools and middle schools have been canceled. Or they're in some kind of strange holding pattern, right? That they may happen in the spring or they may happen. Cyber Patriot, that's not happening across the board because it is virtual and because it is so easy to maintain. That is something that they're not canceling, right? In fact, as far as the summer camps too, we were one of the only summer camps that continued over the summer because we were again holding it virtually, and so there was no fear of anyone having any problems with exposures. So that's the piece that's really important, is that it seems to be thriving in a situation where others are not, right?
And so let's talk about how, if schools aren't already involved in this program, how they can get involved.
So number one, I'm the local contact, right? So there's a support group here locally, which is really important because I don't want anyone to think that they're on their own on this, right? So they can contact us at www.micyberpatriot.com, and I'll help walk them through whatever they need, right? But then there also is the national program, which is at www.uscyberpatriot.org. And that has everything you could possibly need as far as information. Ahead of time, year ahead of time, what the schedule looks like, when all the events are going to be happening, all the prices. You can even download digital brochures, whatever it is that you need as far as that goes. And they also are, just like I am, I've over the 5 years of being one of their centers of excellence, we've learned is they're only a phone call away, an email away. I'm only a phone call away, an email away. And we definitely have this amazing group of industry leaders here in Michigan that are cyber patriot or cybersecurity professionals that have stepped up and are lending their hand. So you aren't going to be in this alone. You're going to have us here, and you're going to have all these mentors out there across the state that are actually doing this for a living. And so they'll be able to bring that real world experience to this lovely hands-on learning experience for your students. It's also something that sort of takes them and prepares them for a career, and it also does the gaming and all that kind of stuff. So if they're getting tired of the whole online school and all that other kind of thing, this is one of those times when they can actually interact with with students together, right? Because they really run their own teams. So they have people who are the pilots and the leaders and the people who do the research and all that kind of stuff, and they work as this team, and it's a really cool thing to watch as that happens. There's so much more hip about all this stuff than we are, as far as chatting in the chat room. I mean, and corresponding and sending email links and doing all that kind of stuff while things are happening.
All right, so we're just about out of time. Tamara Shoemaker, why don't you give those email, or I should say the URLs, the domain names again, where people can find out more information.
So so the local one here is micyberpatriot.com, and the national one is uscyberpatriot.org.
All right, Tamara Shoemaker, her day job is at the University of Detroit Mercy, and then does Cyber Patriot program for the state as well. Very busy woman. So thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Mike, for having me.
All right. We'll be back shortly. Right now, we're going to commercial break, and you're watching MI Tech TV.
Thanks,
What do you
Mike.
get at Lawrence Technological University?
Thanks, Tamara.
Everything. Great labs and studios, supportive professors, plus a full campus life, NAIA athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
As a Lawrence Technological University graduate, you're not only marketable, you're worth more. Yes, more. According to payscale.com, when it comes to graduate salaries, LTU is in America's top 100. Be invaluable. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
All right, we're back. Mike Brennan. Matt is out today doing his day job with Lawrence Tech, golf outing, shooting photographs, being the journalist. And so I'm alone. Well, I'm the only host, but we've got some great guests for you. We have calling in, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, and if I don't, you correct me, Iran Bashan, who is the CEO, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, is it Hygeia?
It is Hygeia. Thank you, Mike. Good to be here, and you pronounced it perfectly.
All right, well, good. Nor I have a reputation for mispronouncing names. That's why I try to be as careful as I can. Now, I wrote a story last week about your company and posted it to my website and newsletter, but I thought the fact that you're doing this diabetes treatment and that actually that's what it's really focused on. What you're doing is a technology focused on treatment, right? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the first to bring a digital health tool to market that is focused on insulin treatment. So we hear a lot today about digital health, but it's important to know that most of the tools that are out there are actually not for treatment. Treatment in the past was something that only physicians or clinicians did. And we have created the first tool that is specifically focused on treatment, and it's focused on insulin management. So other tools that you have out there are designed to improve your behavior, lifestyle modification, make sure that you do what people are asking you to do, give you better knowledge. So maybe like a continuous glucose monitor will always tell you where your sugar is, but will never tell you what to do about it. Or some efficiency tool that are focused on the doctors. But the reality is that if you have type 2 diabetes, it's a progressive condition. And with time, you become more and more insulin deficient. And while insulin as a treatment has been around for nearly 100 years, it's not working particularly well. 70% of people in the US that inject insulin still have sugars too high. Their hemoglobin A1C is above 7. And then a lot of bad things can happen to you. But we know that that can be fixed if only you would have taken the right dose on insulin. And that's what we are here to address. We've developed a tool that tells you exactly how much insulin you need to inject.
And this is FDA certified, I believe, right?
Absolutely. We are the first that have been cleared by the FDA to adjust all types of insulin injection, whether you inject once a day, twice a day, or 4 times a day. We can work with you, and we can give you specific guidance for that injection so that it takes the guesswork out of insulin therapy. And if you do that, we know 90% of the people get better very quickly.
Give me an example of how it actually works. So you look at the app, and then what happens?
So everything starts with checking your glucose. So before your injection, you need to start by measuring your glucose, and you apply a drop of blood, or you have a continuous glucose monitor. It doesn't really matter how you do that. But once you have that glucose number, the question is, what do you do next? And our app will take that glucose reading, and within a couple of clicks would say, oh, I see, it's probably around noontime. Are you about to have your lunch? And if you say, yes, I'm having my lunch, it would tell you, well, today for lunch, I want you to take 12 units of Humalog. So you would take your insulin pen, dial it to 12 units, inject, and that's it. The next time that you take a glucose reading, it accumulates all the data in memory and use artificial intelligence to analyze the glucose, look for patterns in glucose, and tailor your doses for your individual needs.
Now, is there an alert mechanism if I don't have diabetes and I don't know that much about it? So forgive me if I ask stupid questions, but is there an alert mechanism for when your sugars get out of balance and it tells you to take your shot or what?
So you would typically inject your insulin on a regular intervals, whether, once a day when you wake up or before you go to bed, or with every meal, or twice a day at your breakfast and at your dinner reading. So you have your routine schedule, but what we actually have created, so while we've developed this app, we are a unique specialty provider within Michigan. So we actually have a clinic. And in our clinic, there are physicians, there are nurses, clinicians that will make sure that you're making the best use out of this technology. So once you approach us or refer to us by your physician, we will schedule a meeting with you like this through Zoom, and we can set you up with the technology and train you on how to use the device. And then every time you use it, because it's an app, all the data goes to the cloud. So every morning or every day, somebody in our clinic would look into your information, and absolutely there are alerts there. So if something is out of the normal range, we may get back with you and say, hey, how are you doing? Everything is okay? It looks like maybe you've missed an injections, or your sugars was a little bit low. Do you know how to treat your low sugar? So it's a fully virtual structured support to make sure that you make the best use out of the technology.
Okay, and then I'm looking at your notes here. It's peer-reviewed, researched, validated. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So it was interesting. You made a comment previously about the FDA. And as I mentioned, there aren't that many digital health tools in the world today that actually do treatment. In the US, in outside of ours, there's only two other that I can think of. So most of those things were historically were done by physicians. Now, the FDA doesn't regulate the practice of medicine. It regulates manufacturing of medical devices. So here we have, in a way, software that practice medicine. So what's your predicate? How do you compare it to something? Well, you got to compare it to a physician, but a physician is not a medical device. So it was a very long journey since we started of multiple clinical studies. And over time, we made the FDA more and more comfortable with the technology, what it is doing, how it is doing, why it should be cleared for market in the US. And during this time, we've done 5 clinical studies. We've published 16 papers in multiple journals, including a year ago, we had a publication in The Lancet, which is perhaps the second best medical journal in the world, second just to the New England Journal of Medicine. And all of that hard work and all of this body of evidence that is all peer-reviewed, judged by others, looked for, and verified for its accuracy, eventually made its way to the FDA, and the FDA got convinced. Seems to be doing something right, and people are getting better. Today we have COVID out there, and when you have your high sugars, there are all kinds of risks that are associated with it. Generally, we talk about long-term diabetes complications. But if you have COVID and you're admitted to the hospital with COVID, if your sugars are high, if your hemoglobin A1C is above 8.5 compared to the normal range of 7.0 below, you're 10 times more likely to die out of COVID. Really? So it's really, really important to get your sugars to the normal range. And if you're using insulin to treat diabetes, all it takes is administering the right dose. And the question is, what is the right dose? And there isn't really an optimal dose. It will constantly change. Study tells us that every week or so, you will need to adjust the dose. And that's what we can do for you. That's what our technology can do for you. It will optimize that dose, will be with you every injection. We're in Michigan. In Michigan, there are over 1 million people with diabetes. Really? And over 300,000 use insulin to treat their diabetes. And of those, over 200,000 have high sugars. And it's strictly because they're not taking the right amount of insulin. We know from our program, for a study that we've done here with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, 90% of the people will get better within 3 months. Will have better sugars, will lower the risk for COVID. So, if you're hearing this, if you're using insulin to treat your diabetes and you're worried about the upcoming fall, when flu comes back, COVID comes back in big numbers, there is something you can do today, and we can help you, and we would love to help you. And if you're a doctor and if you're referring one of your patients to us, we share all the data back to you. The only thing that we do is insulin management. So we don't replace your primary care physician. We don't replace your endocrinologist if you have one. We work with them. We share all the data with them. So if your doctors like to, they can log into the website and see how much insulin you've injected at breakfast or at lunch. It's right at the moment information. All has been peer-reviewed, vetted, and available for anybody that wants to look at the research.
So you've made a couple references to a very long process. How long has the process been? How many years have you been at this?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we started out of the University of Michigan in 2008 and initially went to about 5 years of simply clinical studies until we had our first regulatory approval, and it was at the time to use it in Europe. So in 2013, we've opened our first clinic in Northern Ireland in Belfast, and we've started treating patients there working with the NHS. And then in October 2016, we've started a study with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and we opened a clinic in Livonia. But it was only last February, that we have fully launched commercially in Michigan. And initially it was limited to a small set of Blue Cross Blue Shield of patients, but as of July 1, it's available for everybody. So cumulatively, between the beginning of the time that we've started doing it until now, we've served more than 3,000 patient years. Our software had prescribed more than 4 million doses of insulin. If you're a physician, if you're doing this 10 times a day, this is like 1,500 physician years. So we have quite a bit of experience of using this and quite a bit of happy patients that can talk about what a change this made in their life.
Oh, interesting. And so it sounds like a lot of money. Does that mean that you have angel investors or venture capitalists behind this or anything of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So like any other startup companies, we've raised money initially from angels in the Michigan community, later on from some VCs, from family offices. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan invested in the company. And we're actually out there today raising more money because our goal is to bring it to as many people as possible, as soon as possible. And as much as we'd like to think ourselves as the center of the universe, there's other people in the US outside of Michigan, and we'd like to make sure that this is available to all of them.
Sure. Now, to get the app, it doesn't require a doctor prescribing it, right? Anybody could go to the Play Store or wherever and just download the app, or how does that work?
So yes and no. You can go to the App Store or the Play Store and download, but it does require a prescription. So it's FDA clearance. It's a prescription-only medical device. And when you refer yourself to our clinic, or when your doctor refers you to our clinic, we will prescribe it to you, which really means figuring out what insulin do you use, how many times a day, what's the starting point, and what extra parameters the doctors want to put in there as a safety measures. Once it's been set up for you, then you'll be able to use it. So while you can go and download it from the App Store, it won't start working until you actually have a prescription from a DNAV Care Center clinician. And all of this can be done virtually. So we can set you up remotely. You can go to our website, or you can go to dnavpatient.com, leave us your information, chat with us. We will send you a kit over the mail. We'll send you a blood collection tool to get your A1C done in a lab through the mail, and we'll schedule a virtual appointment and set you up and prescribe you with the app.
All right. I'm sure there's a cost involved, but I imagine most medical plans would cover that cost?
Absolutely. So this is covered by most insurance. And like any other time that you see a specialist, there might be some co-pays or co-insurances, but depending on your plan, that could be $0 to maybe limited to $30 or $40.
Okay, so why don't you give us that URL if people want to find out more? What website do they go to?
The best place to start is dnavpatient.com. That's DNAV patient.com, or they can also go to hygieia.com.
All right, Eran Bashan, from Hygieia. Thanks for being on the show today, and We got to go to commercial break. We'll be right back shortly. And you've been watching M2Tech TV.
Thank you, Mike, for having me today. It's
You're
a pleasure.
welcome. Thank you.
Lawrence Technological University graduates
Dave, do we have Fred?
a higher starting salary. In fact, when it
Not
comes
yet,
to
no.
earning potential, the Brookings Institution ranks LTU
that
fifth
a
among
no?
U.S. colleges and universities. Be enriched. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
What do you get at Lawrence Technological University? Everything. Great labs and studios, supportive professors, plus a full campus life, NAIA athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
Lawrence Technological University graduates earn a degree and a higher starting salary. In fact, when it comes to earning potential, the Brookings Institution ranks LTU fifth among U.S. colleges and universities. Be enriched. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
What do you get at Lawrence Technological University? Everything. Great labs and studios, supportive professors, plus a full campus
Here he is.
life, NAIA athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more. At LTU,
Yeah, be worried there.
is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in
bring him
America.
out now.
Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
Okay, we're back. Now, Matt is out doing his LTU thing. That day job gets in his way all the time, but what are you going to do, right? So he's actually taking photographs at an LTU golf outing. But so me and Fred will go one-on-one here. Fred Brown, our epidemiologist, infectious disease expert that we try to get on the show every week because this COVID-19 is something new every week, right, Fred?
It is. We're learning more every day.
Now, one of the things I sent you last week was I received a study, I can't remember who did it, looking at 14 different face masks that were available. And I know that's really important. I have to tell you, I bike every morning, and I've had all sorts of problems with face masks because once I get up to speed and I'm pedaling very quickly, most of them don't work for me. I can't get enough air in. I feel like, So this morning I tried a different one. I just tried the basic medical one, not another N95, but your basic one. That seemed to work the best. But I had bought a couple of different ones with vents in them to let more air in and more CO2 out. Didn't really work for me. Now that's an extreme example, but I wanted to kind of set that up. So I suppose face masks would vary by what you're actually doing and how you want to use them, right?
Yeah, that's right. There are a few masks that really block. There's N99 masks that block almost everything that goes through, and they can get down to less than a micron of filtration levels. And those are for dusty areas, especially, and for workers. In the healthcare setting, we usually use the N95 masks, and those block down to 95% of substances that are down to 0.3 microns. Now, the average size of a coronavirus is 1.3 microns. So we're getting rid of a lot of the a few of them are going to sneak through, but we'll see from the Duke study that you mentioned that really is the most effective mask. You don't want to use, if you're bicycling and you're away from people, then you could use the N95 mask that has the vent. The issue with the vent, though, is that, and today you see airlines banning them, and the Duke study especially mentioned that what happens is it actually concentrates your exhalations, and if you are sick, you're going to push all of your virus even more effectively to uninfected people. And of course, 40% of us don't even know we have the disease. So there's a huge asymptomatic population out there. So if you're wearing these masks with vents on them, chances are you could be spreading the virus. And so we're trying to prevent that. Now, if you're a worker working in paint aerosoling environments or high dust environments, then they're very effective. And I'd recommend them there, but not in the general hospitals or general public settings. You mentioned bicycling. It turns out that we have the biggest problem with masks, mask adherence, excuse me, when we're in the gym. Only 41% of people in gyms tend to be using masks. And that's because we're exhaling so hard that we have a buildup and it's hard for us to breathe effectively.
Sure.
When you're doing that, the rule of thumb as a healthcare worker is back off. In other words, don't breathe so hard that it's hard for you to breathe through your mask, instead of taking off your mask. Because when you're breathing that hard, generally, we've done studies on joggers and bikers. You should really be about 20 feet away from those guys who are really exhaling hard, singing, shouting. You're really expelling a lot of air. So that's usually the rule of thumb. Our best protection is actually distance. And then we've got the masks to protect us when we come within that 6 feet radius. But if you can stay further away from people, then you're safe, and you probably don't want to wear your mask.
Well, here we are in the fall. I live in Ann Arbor, as you know. Well, you live in Ann Arbor.
That's right. That's right.
So students are going to be coming back now. Apparently, from what I'm reading, is most of the classes will be done online, but still, they're going to be in the dormitories. They're going to be, I don't know if they'll be in bars and restaurants, but let's kind of walk through that. For a student or somebody that's working around these students or in a service environment, what kind of mask should they be wearing?
So I can show you the Duke study, and that's generally the case for everybody, not just students. So maybe we should go into that a little bit and talk about the mask effectiveness. So you're right. At University of Michigan, 70% of the classes will be online, and I'm teaching class this year, and I'll be online 100%. Usually, we get together. We have lots of. We actually have physical get-togethers and experiments and so on that we run, and there's a lot of learning that goes on there, but we just can't do it. So 70% will not be in class, and then the rest of the 30 will either be hybrid or in carefully spaced classes, especially the big introductory classes. We're not going to push those at all.
Yeah, when I was a freshman, I remember sitting in on some classes that were 500 students in a hall. I don't think we're going to be seeing that, right?
Believe it or not, that same hall is still in use, and the most you can get in there and still socially distance is 75 people.
Really?
In a lecture hall of 500.
Huh.
Yeah. You have a lecture hall of 250 students. Those are the other big lecture hall sizes. 45 students. That's it.
Huh.
So even if we wanted to, we'd have to run classes all day or just go through the number of students you'd have to do. So so generally, we're going to have a lot of trouble controlling the virus. Going back to school, adults are having trouble controlling the virus, and believe it or not, the biggest area of viral of what we're finding is the biggest some of the biggest outbreaks have occurred in family and personal friend get-togethers of 10 to 100 people.
Sure.
And the reason for that is people let their guard down. I've been with Joe for a while, he's my friend, and you get close to them. A lot of times there's loud music playing, so you need to get close to hear, and you're expelling a lot every time you talk. And because 40% of us are asymptomatic, we don't know we got it, especially the younger students. And so it's extremely. We will have an outbreak. There's pretty much no doubt about it, until we have testing that we can do twice a week. Once you can test all the students twice a week, at that point it becomes much safer because everybody's everybody's health status. But until we have that or an effective vaccine, we're going to have outbreaks. And any school over 5,000.
I think the last day or two, I also sent you over another story about this new test that tests the saliva.
That's right. That's right.
So how effective would something like that be?
Well, there are a couple of saliva tests that are interesting. There's a group called Prediction Sciences out of Stanford. Actually, they started at the University of Michigan. They were moved to Stanford, and they have a viral saliva test that's very accurate, very sensitive, very specific. They can scale it up to billions of tests a day.
Wow.
They're doing that now. It's all solid state, so you don't need any reagents at all, which is sort of neat. So some of these new technologies are really good. The one you're talking about is the one out of Yale. It is still a lab-based test, so it's not a test that everyone can perform, unfortunately, even though you're using saliva, which is easier to collect, obviously. But because it's a lab-based test, what they've done is they know they're going to have certain reagents. And our biggest problem with these tests that are occurring in the lab are the reagents and pulling everything together. So as you know, you've got 9 different reagents that come together, and they have the swabs coming together, and that all those have to come together in the right amounts at the right time. Half of our supply chain is wasted right now. Half of our capacity is wasted because we can't get everything together in one package to be tested. And so what Yale did is they actually developed a whole series of different ways of processing their test. And so they have multiple different reagents. So if you run out of one, you can use another, and so on, and just a slightly different mix. And that's very important. The other thing is it's the total cost of the test is between $1 and $5. So you have to add in all the transport costs. And right now, my guess is that's probably in excess of another $5 or $10, frankly. But at least you're getting down to a level that you can think about. What we really need, though, is a home test that everybody can do every day, all the time. When you get and those are starting to become at least tested and available. There's a laminar flow test that GSK is trying to roll out with Mammoth, which uses a nice CRISPR technology, and then there's a whole series of paper-based technologies that are coming out. So there are, but we're not as fast as we should have been on this, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I went ahead and got my flu vaccine just this week. And since I'm an older gentleman now, I got the maximum strength one, and my arm still hurts. So I got on Saturday, and my arm still hurts. But I thought I better get in ahead of everybody else that's going to be getting that. Obviously, it doesn't do much for COVID. But if you don't, I mean, the worst case scenario is you have the flu and you have the COVID at the same time. That'd be horrible, right?
Yeah, that's the scenario. You want to avoid that scenario. And the other thing is when you have a vaccine, and we found this with polio vaccines and mumps vaccines, that if you have these vaccines, it recalibrates your immune system, and the flu shots also will do that. And so as an older person, what happens is our immune system starts to react a little bit slowly, and then it overreacts, and that's what causes a lot of the deaths that we're seeing. And so by having the flu shot, the pneumonia shot or the mumps shot, you can actually stimulate your immune system to respond appropriately to the COVID virus, which is really important, actually.
So I had a pneumonia shot several years ago, and then would you recommend that people get booster shots for pneumonia shots, things like that?
Yeah, you can get a booster shot, absolutely, and that again just sort of recalibrates your immune system, so it kind of wakes up the helper T cells and so on, and it is helpful to have just a vaccine generally in the space. The other thing that's nice about the flu shot is that if you do come down with the flu, it's not going to be as virulent. Generally, what happens is our flu shots are about 40 to 60% effective, and what happens is we actually reduce the virulence of the virus, so you have it for a shorter period of time, and it's not quite as heavy on your body. So that you really, especially the older generation, that really helps with survival rates if you got both COVID and flu at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So anything, I know vaccine is the charm that we're all waiting for. But there's been a lot of noise about maybe a vaccine by October. What do you think?
Never going to happen. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. We have two. You can choose one. One has 10% safety, huge serious adverse event, not just a sore arm, but I'm talking about major systemic reaction in China. So you can go to China and have that done. I think Saudi Arabia has a few of those shots, so you can get that done there. And of course, you can get the Russian one, which of course Putin's daughter had. We're not sure which one, but had the shot, and she said she had a little pain in the arm like you do right now. problem with that is it's only been actually injected into slightly less than 100 people. So that the chances that first of all you've got that we got some immune response, and second that it's going to be lasting is very low. Basically, what they did is they took a known adenovirus, a known virus, and they put in viruses that weren't actually the COVID virus, but related to the COVID virus from the common cold. And so we know it's going to be pretty safe, but we don't think it's going to be very effective.
So probably next spring at the earliest, before we really see something that you think would be effective, or not?
If we're very, very lucky and very, very fast, and the FDA does some really special things, then yeah, early next year. I think we might be able to get something as early as late December for very specialized groups of people, but for the general population, we're talking about at least spring of 2021. And probably, and the problem is, to be something that's really effective and sanitizing and really impacts the disease at a major level, we're probably talking end of 2021 earliest.
Yeah, and of course, then scaling up the manufacturing of the vaccine. I mean, well, I'm not sure how many people we have in the world. I think it's somewhere around 8 billion.
7.8 billion.
That would just be one shot. I mean,
that's right.
Probably is going to take multiple shots, right?
You need 15 billion. Yeah, most of these have to be boosted because they have small amounts of. Generally, the first time you take the shot, it gives you about the same level of antibody level as someone who is severely infected, and that we don't think that's going to protect you long enough and enough to really give you the kind of protections we need long term. So then you have to have a booster shot with almost all these drugs. So we're talking about double the dosage. United States has spent $9 billion so far on a vaccine that doesn't exist, just so we're in line to have access to all these vaccines. But when you look at the supply chains, the biggest area of challenge we've got is we don't have enough glass, and we don't have enough stoppers, and we don't have enough needles to actually do even 300 or 400 million times 800 million in the United States doses, right? So right now, not everyone wants to have the vaccine. Only about half of people want to have the vaccine. About 30% are holding back, saying let's wait and see, and about 15 to 20% saying I don't want to have the vaccine at all, which puts us pretty much at the level. If all the people who are on the wall right now, on the fence right now, move and say yes, I'm going to have the vaccine, then we're about at the appropriate level for true herd immunity. But that means we've got a lot of convincing and shots to do. The borosilicate production facilities, basically you had in order to get your flu vaccine, only have about half the capacity they need to in order to do the COVID shot. I'm sorry, about a third of the capacity they need right now to actually fill all the COVID vials. And we've got other things to vaccinate as well. All the pneumonia shots are coming up and so on. So that's actually, it's funny, but the issue we've got isn't so much we will have a huge, I'm working with a number of companies that are trying to produce their different manufacturing environments. And, these are brand new kinds of environments, scale up's quite difficult. And the FDA, has what they call CMC procedures, or manufacturing control procedures that have to be very well looked at, evaluated, validated. That you have to validate the equipment, you got to validate the process, you got to validate all the technicians, you got to validate all the inputs, and so that takes time to make sure that we're producing things not at a 30,000 person scale, but at a 800 million level scale. You're talking about a vast size and difference in scale. When you have those changes in the scale, your clean outs have to be different. The way you flow the material through has to be different. Everything has to change. And so I'm helping a couple of companies do that right now. And I think, I'm pretty heartened by it. But we have a long way to go.
Well, let me ask you, when at some point, somebody's going to identify a vaccine that really works well. What's the chances then of them sharing that information with all the other vaccine makers out there, so we have a world response? I know this is a very competitive environment and everybody wants to make their big money and big pharma and all that. Is there any likelihood something like that could happen?
Well, so it's all about what they call intellectual property. And what the vaccine manufacturers will do is they will protect and patent certain sequences, certain kinds of manufacturing capabilities, certain adjuvants, certain processes, so their system is special. Now, eventually, we can get to a space of becoming generic. Usually, that happens after 20 years. And that, at that point,
I don't know if I'll be around in 20 years, but hey, maybe.
At that point, then it's open season, and you can go after it.
Yeah.
Generally, even then, it's usually a little bit longer because there are a lot of patents that sort of what they do is they do what they call patent thickets, and they start to create patents on top of patents on top of patents. So if you look at Humira, for example, which is a big drug, the original patent of that came off in 2015, and they're going to be patented until 2023, as it turns out, in the United States, because they have manufacturing patents, they've got use case patents, they've got active material patents. So all those different patents come into play to create an overall protection for the people who are developing it. So that's a big, so if you look at the costing, what's interesting is the costing right now that the United States has negotiated, in Europe, they've negotiated $2.50 a test. Our costing is between $4 a test, which is with AstraZeneca, and $39, I'm sorry, not a test, a vaccine, $39 for the vaccines with Moderna. So you're getting into, now you'd have to double that because you're getting a booster shot. So you're getting into between $10 and $75 a shot. So that's it's getting expensive. And if you have to have these every 6 months, we're not sure how long it's going to last. Maybe every year if we're lucky, maybe every even longer if we're even luckier. Then it's going to get expensive.
Yeah, well,
we're 300 million people. That's the
right.
problem. We multiply it through, and it gets pretty expensive.
Okay.
So you wanted to talk about the Duke study. I've got this. I got the material. If you're interested, we can talk a little bit about the Duke study, which talks about masks.
Yeah, absolutely. We got about 10 minutes left. See if we can cover it in 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. We'll do it like a movie.
All right.
Let's take a look here. Here's my screen. I don't know if you can see it all right.
Not yet. No, now I can. Okay.
All right. So this is sort of interesting. The reason we want to wear masks is because, and here's the vaccination, pneumonia, polio vaccine. You can see that I was talking about vaccinations and how that helps you. So that's a little bit of data there as well we talked about earlier. But the reason that we're worried, the reason we all want to wear masks is because there's so many asymptomatics out there. People who are walking around, your friends, good friends, who absolutely have absolutely no symptoms, and they're doing great, and they play tennis, and they're looking really active, and they have no symptoms, but they actually have live virus, and they cough and they breathe and they come close, and all of a sudden you catch it, and you may not be asymptomatic. You may actually have bad symptoms, and so that's why you want to have your friend wear the mask. That's why you want to wear the mask, and you can see what was interesting is we're starting to see that viral load. The dose of the virus you get can actually, we think, affect how bad your symptoms are. So if you remember that doctor who died in China, he was constantly seeing patients. He was getting a lot of viral load, and he was only 31 years old, and he died because he had all this virus in him. And his immune system was just overwhelmed. So you don't want to get into a situation where, because your friend hasn't worn the mask, you're not wearing the mask, you got a big viral load, because you probably will have worse symptoms. Now, we don't know that 100% sure. It's not a perfect correlation, but we're pretty sure. We're getting surer by the day. So you can see the surgically masked people had milder cases. People tend to get less sick on lower doses. And the Argentinian cruise ship, we had sort of two cruise ships that were going at the same time. One was this Argentinian cruise ship, and before that, we had the famous Diamond Princess in Japan. Diamond Princess, that was really early. No one wore masks. And you can see that the amount of people coming off the ship, only half of them were asymptomatic, which means that half of them had very little symptoms and were in pretty good shape. The Argentinian cruise liner, that happened a few months later, everyone was wearing a mask, and 81% of those patients were asymptomatic. So you get almost you get that between 50% if you don't wear a mask in terms of chance of becoming asymptomatic, 50-50 versus a 20% chance of becoming symptomatic if you get sick and wearing a mask. So that helps, right? The mask helps you, we think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So here, I have a little bit of, there's a really interesting study about hospital rooms. And if you're in a hospital, the mask probably isn't going to, if you're there for a long duration of time and you're breathing a lot of air, the mask can help you quite a bit. And the reason you want people to wear masks in the hospital is because you can see that here are these two patients, they weren't wearing masks, and they had very good air filtration. They had 6 times removal an hour. We're looking at, even schools have like 4 times an hour. So this is 6 times an hour. They had ultraviolet radiation of all the air that went through the system. And they still found all of these viral particles in the air by the one guy who wasn't wearing a mask that was floating in and infecting the guy who did have a mask. He was asymptomatic, and they realized, oh my gosh, the guy has COVID halfway through because the other guy got sick. And then they started measuring the viral levels in the room. So if you're going into a hospital or you're in a nursing home, there are all sorts of reasons you want a private room at this point. Because if they don't detect the fact that your roommate has the virus, or all the people who visit the roommate, during the course of a sickness have the virus, you're going to get sick, and you don't want to do that. So if you can afford it and your insurance covers it, get a private room, even if everyone's wearing a mask. So here's the mask. Well, what kind of mask is the question, right?
Right.
And you can see here is the data, and basically this is from a Duke study. And we had all sorts of original models of this stuff, and we had all sorts of very complicated, numbers and complicated math that kind of talked about, what made a mask effective. It turns out that blockage makes the mask effective. It's all about pore size. It's all about electrophysical properties. So the N95 fitted mask, both you are protected, and the person who you're talking to is protected. That's true with a surgical mask as well. You are protected, and the person you're talking to are protected. Once you get into cottons and non-surgical or non-N95 masks, at that point it protects. If you're wearing a mask and you do not have COVID, and you're talking to someone who does have COVID, and that person is less than 6 feet away from you, and you're talking with them for more than 15 minutes, you've got a 70% chance of getting a dose of COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. If the person you're talking to has COVID and he's wearing a mask, and you do not have COVID and you do not wear a mask, you only have a 20% chance, right? So keeping the person who you're talking to having the mask on is really important. Both of you guys are wearing a mask, only 1.5% chance. So that's really where you want to be. Cotton, so polypropylene is a little bit better blocker than cotton. So if you have a choice of wearing a mask and it's got to be the fabric, choose polypropylene and try to layer it 3-fold thick. If you're going to wear cotton, 3 thickness cotton layer of flannel was the best blocker, and 1 was, of course, the worst blocker. So it all depends on the thickness and how many blockages you've got. You can see the knitted masks didn't do very well, right? What they looked at was droplet counts that you were able to inhale through the mask. And you can see the graph they did. They had a laser beam. They breathed through the mask. You could see how much particles, and they had a particle counter, was going through the mask as a result of that breath. And over time, you can see how much slowly developed. The bandanas are almost worse than nothing. So the people who have the bandanas that just pushes your breath downward, that's not so effective. And my guess, they didn't test it. I'm disappointed they didn't. My guess is that probably face shields are similar to bandanas in this. And so I would beware of people who are only wearing a face shield. Certainly stay away from guys who are only wearing bandanas. The worst thing you can do is wear a fleece. You know why?
Why?
It turns out that the fleece is actually aerosol, the droplets.
Ah.
So you push it through, and it actually makes the droplets smaller and more widespread and in the air longer. So whatever you do, don't wear a fleece, because it actually is worse than having nothing. So that was very fascinating, I thought. So that kind of gives you a sense. N95 is best. Get it if you can. Surgical masks don't wear the one with a valve. Surgical masks are about as good if you can get them. They use the electrostatic stop. Polypropylene slightly better than cotton, but cotton breathes better. So you want to make there's a trade-off there. If you're going to get cotton, 3 layers thick. Don't wear bandanas. Don't wear knitteds. Don't wear fleeces.
All right, 2 minutes left. So what can we sum up in 2 minutes?
Mask care. Take care of your mask. It's like underwear. Wash it every day. Put it in some bleach every day, and then throw it in a hot dryer. If you start seeing fraying around the ears, probably not a good mask anymore, especially for N95 and surgical masks. Don't wear it again. When you take off the mask, take it off on the sides. Don't hold the front because it's full of crud. So then you have to wash your hands after you do it. If your mask gets wet, throw it out. It's not going to be useful anymore. It's going to block the pores. And if you have an N95 mask, put it in the sun for 3 hours. That's what we recommend at this point. And so that's some of the stuff on masks.
Well, we need to get you to put your slides up on your website. I'm not sure if you're doing it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I'm not doing that. I should do that. I don't know if you want to, maybe we can just post it on fredbrown.com. If you want to just post a llink. Why not?
Yes, that's the next thing I was going to say. You can find out more information at fredbrown.com. So, we're very good. I don't know, Dave, did we scare the heck out of you again or not? So,
well, we'll see. I think we've got him. I think we've got him queued up for another round tonight with us. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, tonight will be scary. I'll talk a little bit about long-term effects, and you'll be shocked.
Okay, I'll start mixing drinks now. Life will be
yes. Warn your audience. Fred is coming on. So,
this mask care is good information too, for sure.
Oh, I'm happy to show it again if you want me to. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the mask thing is important because a lot of people are trying like me. I tried 6 different masks for biking, and I couldn't find one that really worked that well. So, but anyway, another enlightening and scary session with Fred Brown. Thank you, Fred. And
pleasure.
We look forward to having you join us again next week. We hope that Matt will be back from his duties at LTU. And we hope you've enjoyed the show today. You've been watching MI Tech TV, and we'll be back next Monday.
Oh, we never run out.
Thanks, Fred.
Oh, absolutely. Pleasure. We never run out of